Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Popco the Writers, episode 101.
We
That's
were
right.
so shagged out after that 100th episode, we had to take a week off.
Oh yeah, yeah. When you get Dan and Paul together, that just is gonna take up all the oxygen in the room anyway. But no, it was great having everybody back. That was a lot of fun.
It really was. It really,
Yeah,
really was.
yeah. So we're gonna kick it off by talking about some stuff we've been up to lately, and the first thing is this thing.
this this
E20 or
thing.
die.
Memories of old school role playing games from today's grown up kids. This is volume 4 of my memories from today's grown up kids series, and it's literally about talking about all the great classic tabletop role playing games from. We go from 1974 and the beginning of D&D up to the end of first edition D&D, which is I think 87, if I'm not mistaken. There's a couple of the writers actually go a little bit past that, but generally the end of the 80s is the cutoff of what we're talking about there. So not just D&D, but AD&D and Traveler, Champions, Villains and Vigilantes, the Marvel superhero role playing game, the DC Heroes game. Did I say Traveler, Call of Cthulhu? All those great games, Top Secret, and all of that. The Doctor Who, the first Doctor Who role playing game, first Star Trek role playing game. I was just talking today online about one of the essayists did talk primarily about Dragon Magazine, and just reading that essays just hit me like a ton of bricks about how I hung on just waiting for the next Dragon Magazine to come out. We were just obsessed with Dragon Magazine. So so this is it's 24 essays from all different veteran gamers, and even some guys that went on to become professionals in the gaming industry too. And then we actually got Jim Zub to write the forward to it, and he's just one hell of an accomplished writer and gamer and all that. He wrote the Dungeons and Dragons comic book, which is amazing. So if you're interested at all, you grew up with these games, this is the book for you.
Yeah, Jim Zub also writes a series of D&D handbooks geared towards younger players.
Oh yes, right.
And I actually picked up a few of those and I tossed them into my game as books that my players have picked up so they
Hmm.
could have some reference material.
Yeah. Well, he was so perfect to write this because everybody who's an essayist in here, and that was the other thing is that you had to be a kid. You had to be a grade schooler or a high schooler in that era that I set down to be able to be in here. So it's a lot about kids playing the role playing game. I started when I was a sophomore in high school in 1981. So I'm actually considered kind of late, getting coming to D&D. It was, if I understand this correctly, that was right when AD&D came out. I think that's right around there, 81, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't know that. When I was taught to play D&D by a kid on the bus coming back from high school one day, he had the basic D&D books, but then suddenly he got the AD&D books. So we segued really quickly. I think when we first played it was D&D, and then right after that it was AD&D, and then we didn't look back. After that we just kept on with AD&D, and we were into everything. We were into making maps. We took turns being dungeon master in our little neighborhood group.
Yeah.
We had to stop ourselves from playing more than once a week. We would just, I remember the first time that we started, we was like a couple days in a row, and somebody finally said, you know what, we're gonna get burnout really quick if we don't make it once a week. So we started doing once a week. And as Dan, you and I were talking before we started here, we were into the lead miniatures and painting those. I can still remember the revelation of gluing a lead miniature to a popsicle stick. So it was easy, like you didn't have to hold the miniature itself and paint it. And we used to get the tiniest little brushes, and sometimes we'd even pluck out some of the hairs so we could get it down to like, 3 hairs, 2 hairs to do
Oh yeah.
balls and stuff. Oh, the memories, the memories.
Well, you were speaking, but okay, your book is on sale now on Amazon.
It is indeed ebook and print edition.
There you go. So speaking of miniatures, that was one of the things I did Friday night. I got together with my nephew and his buddy George, and we worked on Warhammer miniatures. Warhammer is something I'm just getting into this year. I got into D&D a couple years ago, but now I'm trying Warhammer, and I built some, but I hadn't gotten around to painting any. So I anal retentive, went out, watched a bunch of videos, figured out the best way to do this, and ended up doing what they call it's it's a couple different names for it. Slap chop is one of the names for it, for this painting style, or Zenithil is the other for the way of priming it.
Okay.
And what I basically did was I took 4 of the figures and I did a black primer coat on them, just completely covering them. And those turned out much better than I expected. It didn't really, didn't lose any detail, which I was very happy about.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you take like a gray primer or a gray base color, and you just spray it from the top. So the shadows stay.
Right.
But then you start getting in some of the some of the midtones and stuff. And these guys are called gray knights. So that gray is actually their base color. Their armor is that gray.
That works out well.
Yep. And then what you do is you take a dry brush or a makeup brush, and you just hit it with a dry brush technique with white.
Right.
And you really hit the highlights and stuff. Right. So this was just, I think I spent maybe 20 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes getting them to this stage. And then I use something called contrast paints, which is, or wash is another name for them, or speed paints. And they're basically, it's a real thin paint where it'll like sit more in the crevices.
Yeah.
So it'll keep that dark texture, those different layers that you build up in the priming stage. And this was the first, I had enough time to work on one figure really well.
Nice. Wow.
So this was the backside.
Yeah, these figures are so detailed now. Yeah. I mean, there was some nice ones, back in the day. And we talk about him in the book. There's one guy who actually goes down the list of all the main companies. There was Grenadier, and I'm trying to think of one of the other, Avalon Hill, maybe. I can't remember. I remember Grenadier. And there was the very, very cheap ones, and then there were nicer ones, but man, we didn't have any of that sophisticated painting stuff with like primer. We just started painting, but we learned things as we went along. Like we did the eyes first, like we blopped in white and then did the iris and gave it that little dot of life if we could, unless it was too small. Then we did the flesh tone around, that, instead of trying to do the flesh tone first and then putting in the white. And we did that where we did a little dry brushing on the highlights to get things, or at least I did, and then a very wet wash over it. And it wouldn't stick to the tops, but it would go down into the, crevices. I mean, I was an artist back then, so I was pickier about what I did, and if I do say so, I think mine looked better than most the other guys in the group, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, this one turned out about, I'd say, oh, good, 100 times better than I expected. Because I don't consider myself that good of an artist.
Mm.
I don't have steady hands.
Yeah.
And
that's really what it takes. Like, I could never do it today.
Yeah, so I am very happy with that. I also used a little vice drill to put holes in the end of the gun because for some reason they don't have the holes for the guns. So I like
Wow.
putting those in. And
Well, that's because they don't want them to be mistaken, for real guns in public.
exactly. Yeah. So
Did they tell you that you should paint the tips of them red, or so that they, again, don't look like real guns?
no, that's not it. They don't even tell you how to paint them. They just they tell you what colors you might want to use.
Yeah.
Of course, their colors.
Yeah.
And they all have bizarre ass names like Basilium Gray,
Mm-hmm.
or that was one of those Skeleton Horde brown. It's like, okay.
Now, there isn't there like pre-painted Warhammer miniatures or
No.
Okay, I was
D&D
thinking
has pre-painted ones,
Mm,
but Warhammer doesn't. Warhammer, painting is part of it. It's like an initiation rite you have to go through because you're not in. One of the rules is you can't have unpainted miniatures in a game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like I haven't even played yet. I haven't even gotten to the playing stage. I've still got the rest of my army to build.
You still have dues to pay, man.
That's right. Yeah. So and that's the 4 you saw on that sheet there. That's just the first 4. I still have probably a dozen more characters that I'm going to have to do, just to build my army. And then now I got this new guy that my nephew got me for my birthday, Castellan Crow, and you can tell, well, he's going to be a pain to paint too.
So he has a name, so that is an established character. Is that how that works? Okay.
A handful of them have names. There are multiple army. I mean, there's a ton of different armies, and they have variations of named characters and then cannon fodder.
Yeah.
This is your Terminator squad. These are your paladins. These are your pacifiers. That type of thing. The guy that I painted, his name is Grandmaster Voldus, Arctic Voldus. And and they have this big, huge lore backstory for him. The guy here in the box, Castellan Crow, his sword talks to him, and craves battle and all this stuff. So there is a lot of really good backstories, and it's diverse as hell. There's Space Marines, there's creatures, there's zombies, and one of my nephews is into a group. I think they're called the Imperial Guard, and they're all like mech suits. They're all like these big Robotech style. So he's got like his entire army is 4 figures, but one of them is this big. It's like, oh, that's the easy way out. I think he's already built all 4 of his. I'm like, well, of course.
Yeah, there's like for a long time there's been novels of Warhammer, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
And each faction has their own stories, and they don't. It's not like where you just read one big thing.
Right.
It's like these are the Grey Knights, and they have their own thing. Henry Cavill, he's in the into the Custodes, and his that's a whole nother army. It's a completely different storyline. And they all
of his have the S symbol on their on the chest, right?
Yeah, Adaptus Custodius is, I believe, what their name is. It's a lot of Latin in this too, which is kind of weird, but
yeah, I mean, what little I know that. Yeah, and it has, and you were talking about Space Marines and stuff like that, but it has like fantasy elements in it too, isn't it? Like it's fantasy and science fiction.
There's two divisions, I guess you'd call it.
Okay.
There's Warhammer Siege of Orgrimmar, and that is a fantasy element.
Yeah.
And then there's Warhammer 40K.
40K,
That's
right?
the sci-fi version.
Okay.
So they are separate.
Oh, they can't be combined?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean,
Okay.
of
It
course,
just
you can have
isn't
house
done.
rules,
Yeah.
but so I think the rules work the same, but they're different time zones, the timelines and stuff.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure what they're going to be adapting for television and movies and stuff is 40K.
Okay. I would think so, right.
Yeah.
So after you have the miniatures and things, then you have to build like battlefields, right?
Yep.
Jeez. It'll
Yeah,
be years before you actually play.
Yeah. Well, they have a version of the game called Kill Squad.
Mm-hmm.
In Kill Squad, you only have like 6 or 7 miniatures, and it's a different set of rules. But I think that's a great idea because now you're not building these huge armies.
Yeah.
You're just building like a small amount, and then you can at least play.
Well, that's a good idea, right? That you don't need all 100 things across,
My problem is that there's certain rules and certain number of points you can play. Each character is a certain number of points. Mm-hmm. And there are some within the factions that can't be on the field at the same time as others, stuff like that. So, but I'm a collector. I have a collector mentality.
No, not you.
If I get like one of the Avengers for Hot Toys, I want them all. I want the set.
Well, sure.
Yeah. So of course, even though I can only play certain ones in a group,
there
are other Grey Knights that are out there too. So I'm probably going to end up just buying, building, and painting all of them.
Wow. So I'm looking it up right now. Warhammer started in 1983. So this is the 40th anniversary of the game this year. Then.
Yep. And each faction has its own codex or book, and they get updated every few years. It is pretty interesting. And then if they don't necessarily publish a new book every time, but like the 10th edition is coming out, and I've got the 9th edition codex, they're not going to expect me to buy the new codex. Mm-hmm. What they'll do is online, you'll see what the changes are.
Oh, okay.
So, but other factions that haven't had a recent codex, they'll get new codexes.
So it says years active, 1983 to 2015. So, and then it says that it was succeeded by Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So that must mean the original game went up to 2015, and then there's
that's talking about the fantasy side of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
In 2015, they did like how D&D does 5th edition.
I see it. Yeah. It says Warhammer, formerly Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or just Warhammer Fantasy. Okay, totally get it now. But I mean, the thing known as Warhammer has been around since 1983.
Yep.
Interesting. Very interesting. I doubt if I knew that. That was the year I graduated from high school. I don't really remember. It must have been the 90s before I probably when I started working at bookstores is probably when I realized, that it existed, but have never played it. I've never actually known anybody, around me who's played it. I know a lot of guys online who are into it and the novels and all of that, but
I didn't know anything about Warhammer. I'd heard of it, but I had just started playing D&D. This was just not that long ago.
Yeah.
And Lisa and I had gone out to go see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Mm-hmm. So again, kind of dates when this was.
Yeah.
And she was just getting it. We were just getting her and her kids into D&D. And we went to go see the movie and had time to wait. And there was a Warhammer store next to the movie theater.
A whole store. Just
A whole store. They're
wow.
normally called Games Workshop, but there's a
Yeah.
couple out there that are known as Warhammer stores. And we went in and had some time to kill, and the guy there was just so friendly and greeting, and it's like, oh hey, do you know about Warhammer? Oh, and he says, and we also teach you how to paint the miniatures,
Hmm.
and we've got sample ones here, so you could just come in and we give you the sample ones. We have the paint, and we'll teach you how to paint. So we're
Hmm.
like, okay, this sounds interesting. So when we left, went to the movie, and then a couple weeks later, I was back up there. We're like, let's go. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go learn to paint. And we did, and mind you, we painted mainly D&D after that.
Yeah.
But we got kind of and it was kind of interesting. And then we went back a few weeks later and took the kids so they could learn how to paint. Because I mean, they did such a great job on the teaching and stuff that and then they all painted their own miniatures for D&D. But that was my first introduction that Warhammer even existed. And I'm looking at these things and I'm like, we bought a couple skeletons or zombies from the fantasy side that we were going to use as part of our D&D game, and Lisa and I painted those, and so it was pretty interesting to have those in there. But
how do you figure that they're going to be able to turn this into a movie? It seems too big.
well, if you boil it down into, there are the events of the universe that that affect all the factions. But if you focus on a single faction, or like the Space Marines are interesting because they're kind of the heroes of the universe. But there's all these different variations or different units. So there's your typical Space Marines, or the blue guys. Then there's Tempest Fist. There are the Gray Knights, which are the ones I've got. And in each of those, there's this story for each one. So what they'll likely do is boil it down to, they'll just focus on the Space Marines or one faction of the Space Marines and tell that story. And then they can spread out, I mean, infinitely.
Okay.
You could do all the different ones. You could do the Gray Knights. You could do the Tempest Fist, the Death Guard.
Sure. They could have a movie for each, for that matter.
Yeah.
When is this supposed to be out?
They're just starting to move on it.
Okay.
So Cavill just announced that he was going to be kind of the head or the face of the franchise right after it found out he wasn't going to be Superman anymore.
yeah, he had to have something to do, right?
Yep.
With his time.
Yeah. So he's got other projects coming up. He's got that what was, not the League of, but the Department of Ungentlemanly Affairs.
I think I've heard of it, yeah.
Or Ungentlemanly Tactics, which is basically the first Black Ops team that was created by Winston Churchill and Ian Fleming.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, based on a true story.
Right.
So, hey Ed, how you doing?
Eddie.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to Warhammer, and all of this I'm just learning. The lore. I've read one of the Grey Knights books. I've watched some videos. You can go online and just pick one of the factions, and there's plenty of videos out there that'll tell you all about. And it's all over the place. There's one group. The Latin names throw me off, but George is building. They're basically Gothic warrior nuns.
Okay.
Adaptus Servitus. And one of their tanks is a church organ.
Oh, so it's a comedy.
No, it looks badass, but there's monsters. And when Lisa was thinking about getting into, she is still thinking about getting into it. She's like, okay, are there zombies? Okay, because she's a zombie fan. So
Monty Python's Warhammer 40,000. But then there's the faction with the holy hand grenades, and
absolutely. Yeah. I think I saw the holy hand grenade during the coronation this weekend.
Oh yes, I'm sure you did. Yes, it was.
And I guess there was some lady walking around with a sword during the coronation.
I thought that had already happened when it was like I keep seeing it like trending on Twitter or whatever, and I'm like, why are they talking about this now? Didn't that already happen? So England was without a monarch that entire time.
Well, no, technically he was the monarch, but the coronation is like
sure.
It's just a ceremony.
It's like when you run off and you get married, and then a little bit later on, you actually have a ceremony for your friends.
Exactly. My favorite thing.
I totally get it.
My favorite thing to come out of all of this is that in London there is a movie theater called the Prince Charles Theaters.
Mm-hmm.
The Charles Theaters, and up on the marquee it says, "No, we're not changing our name."
My favorite thing, and this was great because it was all over Twitter, was that they kept comparing photos of Charles in his gold outfit to Snoke. I mean, and it was so funny because they had pictures side by side, and because he's kind of like just kind of sitting there like with his head down or just a real dour looking face.
Yeah.
And then they have a picture of Snoke from Last Jedi, and he's kind of, the way he kind of leaned down, but his eyes were looking up. And I'm like, it was totally like, they're like, why is Charles doing a Snoke cosplay and stuff, and stuff like that? It's so funny. And the color of the shirt was almost exactly the same as Snoke's. Or it was like a robe, I guess. And again, just like Snoke's robe. Are
you on stuff like either? Do you do a lot of YouTube or TikTok or anything like that?
I don't know. I don't. I literally do Facebook and Twitter very poorly. I'm a master of Facebook, but yeah, I know that kind of shows my age. But no. I barely have time to do those things, like to add something else in. I'd have to know that the value of it to what I do would be immense for me to be able to, and then I hear just so many horror stories about all these different platforms and like, you go, oh, should I do TikTok? No, it's owned by the Chinese. Like okay.
I got into TikTok a little while ago, and there's a video that's going around, and there's a singer named Adam Lambert, who started off in American Idol,
right.
Ended up working with Queen. He's kind of the fill-in for Freddie Mercury.
Correct. Right.
And he's very good.
Right.
And he was recently on a game show that Jimmy Fallon hosts.
Okay.
And it's a singing game show. I think Simu Liu was on the same episode.
Mm-hmm.
And they spin this thing and it tells you what game you're going to play. And it comes up musical interpretation. And then they pull the lever again and two random things come up. And it's the song The Muffin Man,
Yep.
Drury Lane.
Yep.
In the style of Cher.
Okay.
So this guy walks over.
Cher of what era, though? That's what I would have asked.
Well, he ended up going with the era of Do You Believe in Love?
Oh, okay, yeah, with auto-tune, you mean, or whatever the hell that's called.
He didn't need it.
Okay.
And he does this version of the Muffin Man song. Which is only the two lines. Do you know the Muffin Man who lives on Drury Lane?
Right.
But he does it so well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the Muffin Man? Do you know?
Yeah.
And he sings this. Well, that has gone completely viral.
Okay.
And is now popping up. People are making videos specifically of them singing with his voice, doing the voiceover, and it's just
Okay.
spreading all over the place. And now that damn song is stuck in my head.
Now the important question is has Cher done her version of Adam Lambert doing the Muffin Man?
I haven't seen it yet, but God, I hope she will.
Yeah, yeah. Come on, Cher. You'll be right back up on top again if you would just do
Because she
that.
even does the little hair thing she did. It was really remarkably well done.
That's great.
So,
That's
and it's just damn catchy. All right.
that kid may have a future.
Yeah. Before we dive into, I figured we could talk a little about Guardians because I know you saw it,
I did indeed.
and I know all the spoilers, and I know a bunch of the stuff, so we can
Okay.
have a good
What's
conversation.
funny is that I mean, there's not that much spoilers. I mean, it's not that connected to the rest of the.
No, but there are spoilers for the franchise.
Yes, yes. I see what you mean, but yeah, as far as anything else goes, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought we'd talk. I believe you watched Star Wars Visions.
Oh, I'm six. I watched 6 of them. In fact, it's interesting. I just watched 2 of them like about an hour ago. So I have 2 more to go.
We're only going to talk about the first one
Can do.
because that's the only one I've gotten to so far. But
Can do.
that had a lot of interesting thoughts for me. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the writer's strike.
Okay.
And
if they just call me, they haven't called me yet. I'll
both of the
cross that line.
I saw something today which may be emblematic of part of what the writers are complaining about.
Yeah.
The 2 big things that I know that they're talking about. One is compensation because of streaming.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the way it used to work is you wrote a TV show for a broadcast network and you got money.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it re-aired it went reruns,
mm-hmm.
you would get residuals.
Mm-hmm.
Worked great. And then each time it reran, you got like half of that and half and half and half until
Right.
eventually you're getting like 25 cents a check.
Right.
Yeah. And that was good until the era of home video and media. So when they were putting things on Blu-ray and stuff like that, these writers were no longer getting compensation for their work.
Right, because supposedly there wasn't language in the original contracts that cover that, and that's one of the reasons why Batman 66 took so long to get to home viewing, because they didn't want to have to draw up new contracts, for and go out, right, because the language was not there, right,
because there was technology nobody even thought of back then.
Correct. Yep.
And now we're in an era where at the last time they struck and made a deal, nobody knew what the hell streaming was.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that that you could take an entire series like what's a good example, SWAT, that just got canceled, but you can watch SWAT on one of the streaming services. Mm-hmm. Now the writers who wrote those episodes, they get money from reruns and stuff, but you put it on a streaming service, that doesn't count as a rerun,
which is amazing.
Yeah.
It's still that product. It's still being played. People are still watching it. It's still that work. It's just on a different medium. Yeah,
and I am 100% in agreement with that. Needs to be compensated for.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing they're talking about are, I've heard it referred to as 2 things, either mini rooms or micro rooms, in reference to writers' rooms.
Okay.
It used to be that a writer's room, you would do a show that was 24 or 22 episodes a season, and you would fill the writers' room where you had a bunch of writers in there, and they would all break it up, and you'd get like two guys on each or two people on each thing, and you do maybe 2 or 3 episodes a season.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were committed, and you would make enough money to survive, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You made a decent wage doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the series getting smaller and smaller, the seasons, and now these writers' rooms are getting smaller and smaller.
Mm.
So what happens is somebody like a writer creator comes up with the idea for a show. The network, they don't really do pilots anymore for these streaming services.
Mm.
So they go, well, give us a few more scripts, and then we'll make the decision. So then they'll fill the writer's room. They'll bring like 2 or 3 more people, and they'll do up a couple scripts to give it. And then that pretty much locks in those writers, but they may not get another script to work on.
Mm.
And then they're committed to this show, waiting for an answer, which is no longer on the normal schedule.
Okay.
Unable to hook up with other shows. And again, they may not even be hired for if it goes to production.
Why are they being locked in?
Well, because you have to make a commitment to a show when you get into the writer's room.
Well,
But they're working. And then you have something like the Ahsoka series that's coming up. Now, according to the WGA's website, all 8 episodes of Ahsoka are written by Dave Filoni.
Sure, right. Just like Favreau's writing all of Mandalorian or whatever.
He's not.
Oh. What am I thinking of? I'm sorry.
He's written a lot of them.
He's written a lot of them.
He's brought in writers on a good number of them to co-write with, or yeah. So, but yeah, no, it is really rare. I mean, even Tony Gilroy, who did Andor, he brought in 3 other writers to help him with season 1. Now, one of them is his brother, but there's 2 other writers he also brings in.
A long while back when Smallville was on, and Jeff Johns, comic book writer Jeff Johns, and whatever else he does these days, there was a 2-part JSA, Justice Society, episode, two-part thing. And I remember because I got to see the script before it aired. I guess maybe they were filming it or whatever, or he had just written it. But I remember him telling me because he had written both parts, and I remember at that point that he said that was really rare, that it was almost like a rule that the same guy or person did not write both parts of a 2-part episode, but that he was allowed to do it because he was the JSA, comic book writer. And I never understood why that would be, but I guess that would be so that more writers got work in a series, I guess. But I remember saying, but I said that doesn't make any sense in terms of continuity. I mean, it's a 2-parter. Why wouldn't you want to have the same person write both parts?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, when you're doing a weekly TV show, being able to crank out a script that quickly, most people can't.
Okay.
So that's why they tend not to do that. But because, weekly television, you're turning things around quickly. One script is being written while the previous one's being filmed. And then that moves into post-production. This one starts filming, and the next one is being written, and it's just this assembly line.
Yeah.
But if the writer can't do a script in a week, then you need to have some leeway. So, you start it 3 weeks out, and you've got 3 weeks to write it, because there's a lot of editing process things like that, where you've got to, where the showrunner has to come in and go, oh, no, you can't do that. That we had to change this scene because of this.
Oh,
So, yeah. So there needs to be more time on, and it's a way you work around the fact that weekly television is a very short window.
yeah.
I mean, it's not as bad as soap operas where
Right.
they're cranking out a script a day,
Right.
5 days a week. But it's
By the way, that 2-part JSA episode of Smallville is my only screenwriting I've ever done. I actually wrote one line of dialogue for that, and it made it through, and it's actually in there. When I got to read the script ahead of time, there was this whole funny part where Dr. Fate is talking about how all the original JSA members are gone. That something happened to each one of them, and it's funny. I can't even remember. And he's like really nutty, so he's kind of saying everything in nutty ways.
mm-hmm.
And whatever Jeff had written about the Atom, I read that and I went because he's like, okay, well, what did you think? And I'm like, oh, I really liked everything. I really liked this, that. And I said, but boy, did you miss the boat on a line of dialogue. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, when Dr. Fate talks about the Atom, I said, you should have said the Atom split. And I remember I was talking to him on the phone and there was just silence. And he goes, oh, that's great. He goes, you are absolutely wait. And he like changed it right there and then. And the next thing I know, like that's literally what the actor who plays Dr. Fate says. He goes, Wildcat, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, and the Atom split. So no, I got no credit. I got no money. No, now it's public knowledge. I wrote one line of that episode.
Very cool. Wow, I didn't realize it was. We're just chatting tonight.
Oh, well, we did it. We did half the show on War.
Yeah, we did. That was unexpected. So I guess my thought on that is, I agree 100% on the compensation for streaming. I don't know about the micro room thing because it just feels like everything is changing. And if you can have somebody come in like Filoni and do the whole thing,
mm-hmm.
Do we want to keep that from happening?
Isn't that sort of like being punished for being good or successful or you know what I mean? I mean, yeah, I guess you want to spread work around, but that's not necessarily you're not owed that. I mean, it's a it's a crapshoot to try to get into that business. It always has been. But yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I agree with the thing about compensating for streaming. That's what it is now, and things need to change to encompass that. And I guess I was surprised that they haven't already, been changed. But I don't know what to say about that other thing. I mean, if I came up with something and I said, okay, I'm going to write all, 8 episodes because it's my thing or whatever. And they're like, no, we have to give some work to other people. I said, bullshit. I don't want to do it.
See, I've been on the other end of that where I had a property that was being looked at as a possible series.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought me in and had me talk to the people putting this whole thing together to get my thoughts on certain things. And at the end of it, I said, by the way, I would like the opportunity to be in the room. I would like to be one of the writers in the room. I know I have a little TV experience, but pair me with somebody who's well, and let me, I would like to be in the room. Now I ended up not moving, at least it hasn't moved forward yet.
Yeah.
But, so I've been on the other end of that spectrum. It's like, let me in the room, but I couldn't imagine.
What was the reaction when you asked about that?
They actually thought that was a really good idea.
Well, I would think that would be a good idea to have the creator in there, unless they've had so much experience with creators trying to veto everything.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
and it wasn't like I was asking to be the showrunner.
right? Of
I was
course.
asking just to be one of the cogs in the wheel.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I didn't get any flack about that or anything. But
Good. That's nice.
all right, let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit and talk about the first episode of Star Wars Vision Season 2.
Okay.
Um,
Sith.
Sith.
Yes.
This was very weird to me because when I first started watching it, it didn't click for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't get it. It's all abstract and
Yes, I totally agree. It took her getting out of whatever the hell she woke up in or whatever. Yeah, I wasn't getting any Star Wars vibe for the most part. She really had to go and get out there, and then still, when she went to that other place, it still wasn't. It took the for me, it took the Sith coming in, the Sith person coming in, and then it clicked. By the end of it, I did enjoy that one. There's really only been of the 6 that I have watched, there's really only been kind of one that I didn't really care for at all, you know. But yeah, but I liked the look of that first one. I liked what they were doing. It was interesting that it involved that, or that she was like an artist. The weird thing is that the second episode, it also involves somebody being an artist, which I didn't. It's like, don't put those back to back then. And it's so funny. I get to the third one and I go, I must have missed the memo that said that all of the protagonists this season are
artists.
girls.
Yeah, for me, when she got on the speeder, the bike,
yeah,
that's when it clicked for me.
Yeah,
and the art really, I mean, I really liked the art.
Yeah, by the time it was over, I was into it. Is the look and everything? Yeah,
I loved the lightsaber she had. That it had kind of a katana feel to it.
Yep.
You know, and I love that it was orange. But when she pulled out basically fired up the second blade, I was like, oh damn, that's badass. Yeah. So I mean, I haven't had that reaction since Darth Maul. Now, the lightsaber is no big deal, and but that one got me. I'm like, oh, and I like how both ends are curved. That is, so that went from being, oh, I'm not sure about this, to wow, and it ended as a wow for me.
Good.
So I'm looking forward to the other 7. I haven't had a chance to watch them yet.
Is it 7? I thought it was 8. Maybe I'm wrong.
Total. So I've watched one. The other.
Oh. It's late. My vacation's almost over. It's late. Well, I've got two more to go then.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Guardians.
Okay.
And let me put up the spoiler warning just in case. Spoilers. There we go. Okay. All right. So first thing, I haven't seen it, but I've seen all the review stuff of it, and I've seen clips from it. And so, what is your opinion of it being the final James Gunn Guardian movie?
It totally works as that. It very much does. If there's going to be anything Guardians after that, the Guardians have changed in significantly by the end of the film, that whatever they might do is just a different Guardians. You know, I mean, some of the characters are still in there, but he brought a good end to what he was doing. If not necessarily the Guardians, but what everything he wanted to do for the most part is wrapped up, and in some interesting ways too. Number one, I guess the big thing is that nobody died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's that thing again. Is that the expectations came from the fans?
Well, in this case, I think the expectations came from how the trailers were edited together. There was you
Okay.
looked at those trailers and it felt like
Okay.
people were dying.
I did believe at one point that Rocket was a goner,
Yeah.
and while it was very very sad, this movie is Rocket. It's Rocket's movie. Although, my goodness, everybody gets a lot to do. I mean, it goes back and forth. I'll tell you the one aspect, if at all, that would kind of surprise me, that took a little bit of a back seat to everything, was the Peter and Gamora story. I mean, it's there, but in terms of like Rocket's whole deal, it gets kind of shoved, in the background. I was surprised how much of this movie is Mantis. She really comes forward in this, because it really addresses how the rest of them treat her.
Yeah.
And how, that she's sort of become a joke, and she finally tells everybody how she feels about that. I'm thinking through the characters. Finally, Drax comes off as a badass. I mean, this is kind of funny to say that, I know, but I think we finally realize, like, he can be capable in a fight, or battle, whatever, if they'll just allow it. Wow. Everybody. The other aspect, but I don't personally care, but I think the people who wanted a little bit more from Adam Warlock would have some argument, would have a valid argument here. I don't personally care. I'm glad they're using the character in the movie. I've never been that big of a fan of the character in the comic books, but it is a fairly different version of Adam Warlock, kind of in name. He's kind of only in name. I mean, without the whole Thanos thing, and without the soul gem and a few other things, the whole thing about him is that he's a child in this, and his mother is there almost the entire movie, so that's kind of his arc.
Yeah.
And spoilers, at the end of the movie, he actually becomes one of the Guardians, which is interesting. I mean, I didn't dislike him at all in the movie. It's just really not about him.
He's a side character.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Adam's story. It's Rocket's story and the Guardian story.
He could have been left out of the movie, and it wouldn't, really have mattered, right? It's not, he's not really important to it. I mean, he's basically sort of just there to be a punching bag and to use them as punching bags. I mean, other than that, there's just really nothing else going on.
There's a lot of interesting revelations that I'm seeing from it, like that the Sovereign were actually created by the High Evolutionary.
Yes. Yep.
I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
And that they've basically merged Counter Earth and New World into one.
Yes. Yep. And if I walked away from it with the right angle on it, the Counter Earth still exists. They don't destroy it.
I got the the impression it was destroyed from everything.
No, I mean the Counter Evolution, or the High Evolutionary ship gets blown up, but I don't think the actual whole world of
Well, I thought
Um,
he blew it up.
I don't know. Maybe I fell asleep during that.
One of the things I find fascinating is Groot's line, where he actually speaks and we understand him.
Yeah.
And I'd heard two interpretations of it, and then Gunn has actually come out and set this record straight.
Mhm.
So, for those who haven't seen it, and we got the spoiler thing up, Groot says, "I love you guys," which is the only word he's ever said other than "I am Groot" or "We are Groot."
I don't have any problem with it. He's always been speaking in his language,
Mm-hmm.
and he's been around the rest of them enough to learn a little bit of English or whatever the hell they're
Right.
supposedly
That's not
speaking.
actually what happens.
Okay.
What Gunn says is that the more time you spend with Groot, you learn what Groot's saying by the tone, the inflections.
Right.
We, the audience, have been around him long enough and are now part of his family that we understand him.
Okay, that's very cute. I didn't see it that way. It's funny. I didn't see it that way at all. I just figured he finally learned, he's picked up enough that he's able to say something in
Yeah.
our language. Okay, that's very, very cute. And I totally understand that now and we'll take that. But I didn't have any, the only thing I had an issue was, and that's just because I'm old, is the F-bomb that's in the movie. It's you know what? I use the word myself, but it just is not necessary. That in my opinion, it's not necessary. It doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't make the movie better at all. It doesn't make it well. It does sort of make it a little worse, I guess. But it's just if it's needed these days, I said this online, then it would have been needed for the past 15 years. It's like, why suddenly now? And it doesn't underscore anything. I could almost roll with it if it was like during a scene where somebody's angry or trying to express themselves, or there's some kind of angst or pathos or something. But it's a throwaway comedy line that's actually, I didn't even think the scene was that funny.
Yeah.
And here's me, I'm so old fashioned, I'm like looking around going, this is not an R-rated movie. It's like, when did that change exactly, when you can have one?
You can have one, and it has to be after an hour into the movie.
Okay. And when did that
Hour
change?
10.
Huh?
It aired at an hour 10.
No, but what I mean is, like,
when did that?
That's not the way it's always been.
That it's part of PG-13. You could have one curse word, and that's one of them.
So when PG-13 was created, that was part of it? Okay, I guess I just don't remember any other PG-13 movies that had an F-bomb.
It's all the way back to, like, in the X-Men,
Yeah.
where Wolverine runs into Cyclops, goes, "Prove it's you. You're an ass, or you're a dick. Whether you're a dick or you're an asshole." Don't remember which one he says,
Okay.
but it's their one use.
Okay.
And Marvel's been dancing around that edge.
They have, and it's progressed. Here's an example where there was what I would call somewhat strong swearing in a Marvel movie that had purpose and underscored what was going on. It's in Infinity War, and it's when they're fighting Thanos on Titan, and it's the scene with Peter Quill. Here we go with Quill again, breaking that. When he realizes that Gamora's dead and Thanos did it, and he calls him an asshole.
Yeah.
That was perfect. That underscored that scene. Peter was livid. Of course he's going to say, and being who he is, of course he's going to call one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy an asshole. But like I said, the F-bomb was wasted. If we're going to have an F-bomb, come up, it should have been in the scene where Peter thinks that Rocket is dead.
Well, see, that's the thing, is that you can use it for one of two reasons.
Hmm.
You can use it for dramatic emphasis.
Yes.
Or you can use it for a comedic beat.
Yep.
And personally, I don't swear that often,
Mm.
but I do tend to use swear words more when I'm trying to be funny, when I'm trying to do a comedic beat, because
Okay.
sometimes it's there are certain words and emphasis of words that just work funnier,
Mm.
you know, where you add that, it takes it up a notch. And I
Yeah.
think that's what the attempt was there.
It
Because
was
it's
an
a pretty
attempt,
silly
but
scene.
it again, in my opinion, the where it was used and the way it was used just was lame,
Yeah.
and now to have that in there, and in that scene, it just to me it was like you could have just as easily cut it out, and it wouldn't have mattered at all.
But
But
the scene itself doesn't matter.
no, no, not whatsoever. No, in fact, if anything, it's just slowing down. They're trying to go somewhere in a car, and they literally just stop with trying to show how funny it is that Nebula doesn't know how to use a door on a car. Push the button in, push the button in.
But
I
at the
mean,
same
okay,
time, that's James Gunn's style, and
yep,
it's
yep.
worked more than it
Yeah.
hasn't.
And what's still fascinating to me is that, I mean, that is Marvel movies in a whole. Is we have funny along with the drama, funny along with the drama, and this movie shows that Gunn is usually a master of that.
Mhm.
I mean, he gives you this funny stuff, and then the next thing it's like animal cruelty, right there, and like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, I don't want to cry anymore. This is, and then we get we get kind of they used to call that comedy relief,
Yeah.
but the balance was usually very, very good in that. Again, it's a fitting end to James Gunn's trilogy.
Mhm.
I will say this, though. We have been shown that other writers and directors can use those characters and still be effective.
Yes.
Infinity War. I mean, I still love the whole introductory scene where they're playing Rubber Band Man and they find Thor. I still love that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's practically worthy of Gunn himself, but I'm okay. I actually think all three Guardians movies are to me are all equally good. I can't really say one that I like one more than the other. It's one hell of a trilogy when all is said and done.
Do you consider it the strongest MCU trilogy?
No, no, I don't. To me, that is still probably the Captain America.
See,
You know,
having not completely seen this one, I
mhm.
don't want to judge. But my issue with Captain America is I don't think Civil War is that strong of a movie.
Okay,
I think it's an event. It's an Avengers movie, not a Cap movie.
okay.
But I mean, it's still a good movie. But
Hmm.
to me, that's the weaker of the three
Hmm.
as a Cap movie.
Hmm.
So,
I can say the Guardians trilogy is probably a close second.
mhm.
You know, um, um, yeah, but I'm still gonna go with it. I still think I look back and remember, how much I enjoyed the three Captain America
Yeah.
films.
Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I mean, because I think,
Good, because
yeah,
I'm not.
yeah. I mean, it's not like it's as bad as the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. So the two credit scenes for Guardians 3 are not anything really important. I mean, kind of the first one, in a way. Well, what I mean is, like, we didn't get any of the usual larger MCU things.
Well, yes,
There's no Kang or anything like like that.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you because we know that there is a Guardians team still out there,
Yes, which is important to know. Yes,
and
I
that they're
agree.
a pretty powerful team.
Yep, yep.
And B, we now know that when things go wrong on Earth, Peter Quill is there.
Maybe.
So, so he's now a candidate to pop up in Avengers movies and stuff like that, where before he's always been off planet.
Yeah.
So you could have a Pratt cameo now in upcoming projects. And I do know that at the end, don't they say the legendary Star-Lord will return?
Yes, it does. Yep. Yeah, and that's probably what it is, that he's going to be in Kang Dynasty, or or whatever it is. So real quick, I mean, you haven't seen the full performance of, and I don't want to massacre his name, so we'll just say the High Evolutionary here. What do you think about people saying that they should make High Evolutionary a Kang variant?
I don't want them to make him a Kang variant, but I could see him being influenced by Kang.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
what they're saying is they replace Jonathan Majors with this guy. He's really good, and the character is good. It's he's a worthy adversary in this thing. But I don't know. That's just interesting. I mean, Jonathan Majors is not out of it yet.
Right.
So may never be out of it.
So you're suggesting that if Jonathan Majors does get arrested or fired, that Chukwueze Awudi would be the replacement?
I am not suggesting that. Lots of other people online are suggesting that. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, because I like that name that you just said very much. I think I might actually like him a little bit more than Jonathan Majors. But yeah, I'm not going to go out on a limb and suggest that. No.
Well,
I don't think Jonathan's out of the picture.
He's part of the first ever Marvel Studios DC Studios crossover.
Is that right? Remind me.
Well, when it came time for him to audition for the High Evolutionary, they were filming Peacemaker. So the crew, the DC Studios crew, filmed the audition for him to do that.
Oh, okay.
And in return, Marvel filmed Ezra Miller as the Flash for the end of Peacemaker. Because of where he was located, they had a crew that Gunn could use.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard that. Okay, there you go.
All right. So
there will be peace in our time.
So do you think now that Gunn has left the building?
He has left the building. Yeah, I would think so.
Do you think we'll get more Guardians from other people, like the crew they left us with, which I think would be an interesting group to follow? I mean, because you still have, you still have Rocket and Groot. You now have Phyla Vell, who gets a few different names. I think she's currently Martyr, but she even goes by Quasar at one point.
Mm-hmm.
You have Adam Warlock, and you have Cosmo and Kraglin.
Mm-hmm.
So now I don't know if we keep Kraglin, because Sean Gunn's going to be kind of busy over there with his brother.
You're right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's.
Wait, did you say Drax?
No, Drax is now off. Cosmo, the dog.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to. I'm trying to remember where, because Drax wanted to go with Mantis, but she said no.
No, Drax stays on Nowhere and is going to help raise the children.
That's right. Okay, that's right. That's right. You're right. Well, yes, I do believe we'll see them because of for one, the presence of Adam Warlock. They're not going to drop that character. I don't think.
Yeah.
If we get another Eternals movie, I can see them being in that, because of the sort of the starting to tie, kind of those things together. Adam Warlock should meet, Star Fox and the rest of them, and Pip.
Definitely Pip the Troll.
Yeah, Gamora needs to meet Pip the Troll, right?
Yeah. So,
and that's another interesting thing, is that the Peter Gamora story does not get it. They reconcile in a way, but they're not together at the end, which, you know, in a way is like, okay, because it doesn't necessarily have to go that way. But I like that Peter seems to be, he's good with it. And she even is, you know, okay with it. But they're not okay to the point where they're going to try to have a relationship
Right.
at all.
But
So
no, he's going to go for Nebula now.
I almost thought that might happen. Boy, there's another one. Like Nebula is so good, you know, in this. I think like it was really interesting her reaction to Rocket, remembering that those two had grown close together during Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah.
Now, I think the best thing to come out of it is the fact that nowhere is drivable.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Yes, it is.
We have gone over. So
Okay.
I'm going to try to get over to see Guardians in this next week.
Great.
We'll have to see if I get there.
Great. Because I want to hear your opinion on Chuck Woody, blah, blah, blah.
Chuck Woody Awuji.
Okay, him.
Yep. I want Chuck Woody Awuji to work with Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Okay.
Along with Benedict Cumberbatch and Mahershala Ali, and just get all these fun names into one group.
And Idris Elba.
And Idris Elba. There you go. There you go. There's also a few more Benedicts they could add to the Doctor Strange movies.
Right.
There's an actor named Benedict Samuel who played the Mad Hatter on Gotham. They could bring him in.
Right. He was in Walking Dead, yeah, too.
Yep. So yeah, get all the Benedicts together into one movie.
Thank you, Eddie. You too.
Yep, thanks, Ed. Yeah, this was fun.
Good.
It felt more like us catching up than anything, but
right.
Yeah. All right. So Jim, have a good week. Remember, everybody, check out
D20 or Die.
D20 or Die, and that's available now in stores. Oh, and also for anyone who missed out on Karma, in the current previews, they're doing a trade paperback version of the book now at a lower price. So not the hardback. They're doing a trade paperback version with the Stepan Sejic cover. And we're getting really, really close to kickstarting a second volume. I didn't say that, but yeah, we're like a cover away from being ready. So,
wow.
So, all right. So that's it for this week. And Jim, any writing stuff coming up? You're working on a new novel, right?
I'm working on a new novel. My third DC Jones and Adventure Command International, fingers crossed, should be out within the next couple of weeks. It's with the formatter right now, and I just started in on writing the second book of the fantasy novel thingy that I have. But hopefully DC Jones will be out in the next, I'm hoping 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks.
Nice. And I am working on a script for a new series I'm going to be doing for a small publisher that I'm hoping to be able to announce soon. So, all right, guys, we're wrapping it up there. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you all next week.